My younger brother flirted with and seduced my wife into divorcing me while I was on a long patrol mission out at sea. When I returned in excruciating pain, I turned to my parents for help, but they only looked at me with contempt and spat out a harsh remark. "You're a fool who couldn't keep his wife. Deal with it yourself." I am Travis, 38 years old, a U.S. Navy officer. My life has been tied to the sea, to the waves crashing against the hull of the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln. The ship is my home. My crewmates are my brothers, but each 6-month, sometimes year-long patrol pulls me away from shore, away from family. I've grown accustomed to the endless days adrift, to the roar of engines and the salty tang that seeps into my skin. But no voyage could have prepared me for the storm about to hit my own life. I grew up in a small town in Oregon where fields of barley stretched endlessly under a gray sky. My childhood wasn't easy. My parents, hardened farmers, always favored my younger brother, Ryan. Ryan, 6 years my junior, was the family's golden child. He got new clothes, went to summer camps while I wore hand-me-downs and earned pocket money mowing neighbors' lawns. I didn't resent my parents, I just quietly pushed forward. At 18, I enlisted, choosing the Navy to stand on my own to prove I could achieve something greater. My parents called it a foolish choice, but I didn't care. I wanted to live my own life. The Navy gave me everything: discipline, purpose, and a second family on the ship. I climbed the ranks from a lowly sailor to a commanding officer. I took pride in standing on the deck, watching F-18s take off, knowing I was part of the machine protecting our country. But the cost was time. Long deployments meant missing birthdays, anniversaries, and the quiet moments with loved ones. I thought I could endure it as long as I had a place to return to. That place was Lily, my wife. We met 6 years ago at a small coffee shop in San Diego. She, a 32-year-old accountant, had a warm smile and eyes that sparkled like the sea at dawn. I was captivated from the first glance. Lily was different from any woman I'd met. She was intelligent, independent, and seemed to understand the life of a sailor like me. We fell in love quickly and married after a year of dating. Our wedding was simple, with just a few friends and crewmates, but to me it was the happiest day of my life. I thought I'd found a peaceful harbor amidst the roughest storms. Lily and I lived in a small house in San Diego near the naval base. That house was my dream, bought with a military loan in my name, but I always told Lily it was our home. We weren't rich, but we had enough to live comfortably. I sent most of my paycheck to our joint account, and Lily managed our expenses. She was good with numbers, always saying she'd help us save for the future. I trusted her completely. But married life wasn't always smooth. My deployments left Lily lonely. I knew that. Once she said, her voice tinged with sadness, "You love the sea more than me, don't you?" I laughed, hugged her, and promised to make it up when I returned. I tried. Whenever I was home, I took her out to eat, fixed up the kitchen, or just sat with her to watch movies. But shore time was always fleeting. I'd board the ship again, leaving Lily with promises that everything would be okay. The last time, before a 10-month patrol in the Pacific, I noticed something different. Lily was more distant. She started developing new habits, unlike before. It wasn't necessarily bad, but it left me uneasy. The day I boarded the ship, Lily saw me off at the port. She hugged me, but that hug felt cold, lacking the familiar warmth. "Take care, Travis," she said, then turned away quickly. I watched her walk to the car, feeling like a piece of my heart was left behind on the shore. On the ship, I threw myself into work, trying not to dwell on it. But every night, lying in my cramped bunk, the sound of waves against the hull reminded me that something was cracking. I thought I could fix everything when I returned. I thought my love for Lily was strong enough to overcome distance, time, and doubts. But I didn't know that, in the place I called home, another storm was brewing, a storm that would destroy everything I'd ever cherished. The night sea was calm, but inside me a storm was raging. I sat in the command center of the USS Abraham Lincoln, the green glow from the computer screens illuminating my weary face. 7 months had passed since I left San Diego, since I left Lily. Her emails had dwindled from a few lines about life at home to short, lifeless sentences. I tried to convince myself she was just busy, that everything was fine. But that night, a new email appeared in my inbox, its subject line starkly simple: "We need to talk." I clicked, my heart pounding as if facing an emergency drill. Lily's words were cold, sharp as a blade. "Travis, I've filed for divorce. I can't live this life anymore. I need someone who's here, not a distant shadow. I've withdrawn $20,000 from our joint account to start over. I'm living with someone else. Don't contact me." I read it over and over, each word stabbing my chest like a needle. 4 years of marriage, our promises, the nights I held her and dreamed of our future, all shattered in a few callous lines. I was stunned, but I didn't cry. Perhaps the sea had taught me to suppress my emotions. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling as though the deck beneath my feet was collapsing. Someone else? Who? And why? Questions swirled in my mind, but I had no answers. All I knew was that Lily, the woman I loved more than anything, had chosen to leave me, taking with her a piece of the life I'd built. I typed 2 words. Understood. No emotion, no argument. I hit send and shut the computer. My crewmates around me laughed and swapped family stories, but I stayed silent. I didn't want them to see me weak. I stood and walked out to the deck. The sea wind blew fiercely, icy, but it couldn't dispel the emptiness in my heart. I looked down at the inky water, wondering what I'd done wrong. Was it because I was gone too long? Or because I wasn't good enough to keep her? But then a spark of anger flared. She didn't just leave, she took money, chose someone else without a single direct explanation. I gripped the railing tightly, took a deep breath, and told myself to be strong. I had 3 months left at sea. I wouldn't let this destroy me. Looking back, I realized I'd seen the signs long ago but refused to believe them. Before the patrol, Lily had changed. She was no longer the gentle wife who sat beside me talking about small plans for our home. She became distant, like a stranger living under the same roof. I remembered the evenings she came home late, the scent of new perfume on her clothes and the forced smile when I asked where she'd been. "Just out with friends," she'd say, but her evasive eyes made me uneasy. She started paying more attention to her appearance. Dyed blonde hair, red painted nails, new clothes, things I'd never seen her wear when she was with me. I complimented her, told her she looked beautiful, but she only gave a faint smile as if my words no longer mattered. Once I saw her hurriedly lock her phone when I entered the room. "Why do you have a password now?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. "Just for privacy," she replied, but I knew something was off. I wasn't the jealous type, but it felt like an invisible wall had gone up between us. In the final days before I boarded the ship, I tried to reconnect with Lily. I fixed the kitchen shelves, took her to her favorite restaurant, but she responded with curt replies. On the last night, I held her, hoping to recapture some of the familiar warmth, but she lay still, as if she just wanted me to let go. The next morning, when she saw me off at the port, her hug was cold, her eyes no longer mine. I boarded the ship with a heavy heart, wondering if I was losing her. Now, with Lily's email lying coldly in my inbox, I realized I'd been right. I'd lost Lily, lost the home I once called my haven. But I still had myself, and I swore I wouldn't let them, anyone, drag me down. After 10 months at sea, I returned to San Diego. The USS Abraham Lincoln docked on a foggy morning, the ship's horn sounding like a farewell. My crewmates embraced their families, laughing and chatting, but I quietly slung my backpack over my shoulder and stepped off the gangway. Lily's email still haunted me, each word like an unhealed wound. I didn't know what I expected upon returning, maybe an explanation, or just a fragment of the life I once had. But standing before our house in San Diego, I knew it was all over. The house, once my haven, was now empty and cold. The front door was ajar, dust coating the porch. I pushed it open, the hinges creaking like a reproach. The furniture was nearly gone. The sofa, the dining table, the painting we'd hung on the wall, all vanished. Only a few items remained: a broken mug, some old books, and a crumpled blanket on the floor. The musty smell hit me as if the place had been abandoned long ago. I stood in the living room feeling like a stranger in someone else's home. Lily had moved out, taking every trace of our 4 years of marriage. I checked the bedroom. The closet was bare except for a few of my shirts hanging forlornly. My heart sank, but I didn't cry. The sea had taught me to keep my pain inside. I left the house and drove to Oregon where my parents lived. I wanted to find some familiar comfort in my hometown. But throughout the drive, my mind swirled with 1,000 questions. Who was Lily living with? Why did she do this, and why didn't anyone tell me? The road to my hometown was long and weary, the golden barley fields under the midday sun reminding me of my childhood, a childhood full of unfairness. Ryan, my younger brother, was always my parents' focus. He was spoiled, given everything, while I had to fend for myself from a young age. I'd tried to bury those memories, but now they returned, sharp and painful. When I arrived at my parents' house, the sun was setting. The old wooden house looked the same, with its weathered porch and wilted flower pots. Before I could knock, I noticed a car parked in the yard. From inside, laughter echoed, familiar and heartbreaking. I froze when I saw Lily step out hand in hand with a man. I squinted, trying to make sense of it, and then my heart seemed to stop. It was Ryan, my brother. At 32, with a triumphant smile, he had his arm around Lily's waist as if she'd belonged to him all along. They were affectionate, laughing, then got into the car and drove off right before my eyes. I stood there, unable to believe what I'd just seen. Lily, my wife, and Ryan, my own flesh and blood, had betrayed me in the cruelest way. I pushed open the door and stormed into the house, my anger surging like a tidal wave. My parents were in the living room, Dad reading a newspaper, Mom knitting. They looked up, momentarily surprised to see me, but there was no warmth in their eyes. "Travis, why didn't you tell us you were coming?" Mom asked, her tone indifferent. I didn't mince words. "Lily and Ryan, you knew about this, didn't you? Why didn't anyone tell me?" My voice trembled, not from sadness, but from rage. Dad folded his paper and sighed. "It's done, Travis. Who can you blame? Lily needed someone by her side, not a man who's always at sea." His words hit me like a slap. I looked at Mom, hoping for an explanation, but she only nodded in agreement. "Ryan's good to Lily. He cares for her, unlike you, always gone. You were foolish, couldn't keep your wife, and now you've lost her. You deserve it." I was stunned. My parents, the family I trusted, were siding with Ryan, defending him as if I were the one at fault. "Ryan's my brother," I said through gritted teeth. "He stole my wife, and you call that right?" Dad smirked, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're a Navy officer who's good for nothing. A failure in your own family. Don't blame Ryan." I stood there, feeling another knife twist in my chest. From childhood, my parents had favored Ryan. They bought him a car when he didn't even have a steady job, while I took out loans for college. I sent money home every month, but they used most of it to support Ryan. I'd thought family bonds would overcome everything, but now I realized I was just an outsider in this family. "What did I do to make you treat me like this?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Mom looked at me, devoid of emotion. "You chose your path, Travis. Don't expect anyone to pity you." I left their house without another word. Outside, the sunset blazed red like blood, but inside me there was only darkness. Lily, Ryan, my parents, all the people I loved most had turned their backs on me. I got in my car, determined to get answers. I sped toward Ryan's apartment, about 30 minutes away. I didn't know what I'd do when I faced him and Lily, but I needed to confront the truth, no matter how painful. The streets of Oregon stretched before me, as hazy as my mind. An empty house, a broken family. I had nothing left to hold on to. But amidst the pain, a thought sparked. I wouldn't let them destroy me. I am Travis, a sailor, and I will rise again, even if I have to start from scratch. The road to Ryan's apartment wound through fields of wilted golden barley. The sunset fading, giving way to darkness. I pressed the gas pedal, the roar of the engine drowning out the chaotic thoughts in my mind. But memories like waves kept surging, pulling me back to my childhood, a time when I was always the outsider in my own family. I remembered the days when Ryan and I played in the fields behind our house. I, a scrawny kid, always gave Ryan everything. The new bike, the bigger slice of cake, even our parents' praise. Ryan was the center of all attention. He had a radiant smile, a carefree personality, and it seemed my parents only had eyes for him. "Ryan's so smart," Mom would say, even though he only got average grades in school. Meanwhile, I buried myself in studies, worked odd jobs to buy books, but rarely got a glance from my parents. "Travis, you have to fend for yourself," Dad would say, as if I weren't his son. Once when I was 15, I saved up for a whole year to buy a used bicycle. I was so proud riding it around town, feeling like I'd conquered the world. But just a few months later, my parents bought Ryan a brand new shiny bike, even though he never worked for it. I asked Mom why, and she just shrugged. "Ryan needs encouragement." I swallowed the bitterness, telling myself I didn't need fairness, just more effort. But deep down, I knew it wasn't right. When I enlisted in the Navy at 18, my parents called it a foolish choice. "The Navy? You'll suffer your whole life," Dad said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Meanwhile, Ryan, only 12 at the time, was praised just for playing basketball. I left my hometown with a backpack and a few bucks, without a single word of encouragement from my family. In the years that followed, I sent money home, hoping to help my parents get by. But then I found out they used most of it to support Ryan, buying him clothes, paying his rent, even getting him a car when he was jobless. I called to ask, and Mom only said, "Ryan needs more help than you." I stayed silent, but my heart cracked. Those memories I'd tried to bury deep. I thought that as adults things would change, that Ryan and I could be real brothers, that my parents would look at me with pride. But now, knowing Ryan stole Lily, hearing my parents defend him, I realized I'd been lying to myself. My family was never a place where I belonged. Ryan didn't just take my love, he took the years I sacrificed, the dreams I'd built. The streetlights began to flicker on, and Ryan's apartment was near. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to rein in my anger. I didn't know what I'd say when I faced him and Lily. Maybe I just needed to look into their eyes to see clearly how they'd betrayed me. Or maybe I just wanted to prove that I was still standing even after they tried to trample me. Ryan's apartment sat at the end of a narrow street, a low-rise building with peeling white paint. I parked the car, turned off the engine, but didn't rush to get out. The Oregon night was freezing, my breath fogging up the windshield. I looked up at the third-floor window where a warm yellow light spilled out, as if it belonged to a cozy world I no longer fit into. In my mind, the image of Lily and Ryan hand in hand outside my parents' house still burned, like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I took a deep breath, telling myself I needed to do this, not to argue, but to face the betrayal head-on and move forward. I am Travis, a sailor, and I don't run away. I knocked on the door, the sound echoing sharply in the quiet hallway. After a moment, the door opened, and there stood Lily. She wore a loose sweater, her blonde hair tied back loosely, but her eyes were no longer those of the wife I once loved. They were cold, tinged with surprise and irritation. "Travis, what are you doing here?" Her voice trembled slightly, but not with remorse. I didn't answer right away, just looked at her, searching for any trace of the woman who promised to wait for me after every voyage. But she was gone, replaced by a stranger. Ryan appeared behind her, holding a beer bottle, a smirk on his face as if I were a joke. "Big brother, long time no see," he said, his tone dripping with provocation. I clenched my fists, suppressing the anger rising within me. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low but firm. Lily crossed her arms, looking at me as if I were an intruder. "Talk about what? It's all clear, Travis." I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The apartment was small, cluttered, reeking of beer and cheap perfume. This was the place Lily chose to leave me, to leave us. "You couldn't keep me, could you?" Lily spoke first, her voice sharp as a blade. "You were always on that ship, leaving me alone. Ryan was here, he understands me, cares for me. What do you even know about me anymore?" Her words hit me like a slap. I wanted to yell that I'd sacrificed everything, sleepless nights at sea, sending money home so she could live comfortably, dreams I put on hold for her. But I just stood there, staring at her, feeling my heart crack further. "And that's your excuse for sleeping with my brother?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Lily smirked without a hint of regret. "You're useless, Travis. You don't deserve me." Ryan laughed loudly, stepping beside Lily and wrapping an arm around her waist. "Give it up, bro. You lost. Lily's happy with me. Go back to your ship and leave us alone." I looked at him, the brother I'd always let have his way, the one I'd protected. Ryan with a face so like mine, but eyes full of resentment. I remembered how he always tried to outdo me, from small things like who could run faster to bragging to our parents about his trivial achievements. Now he'd won, not through talent or effort, but by stealing the woman I loved. "Ryan," I said slowly, "you think this makes you better than me? You're just a leech living off mom and dad, off the money I sent home. And now you've taken my wife. You proud of that?" Ryan froze, his smile vanishing. But Lily cut in, her voice shrill. "Don't insult him. Ryan's a real man, not like you, always clinging to that ship." I looked at her, the wife I once thought I'd grow old with. "Lily," I said, "you told me you loved me. You promised you'd wait. Now you're standing here next to my brother, calling me a failure. Have you ever thought you might be wrong?" She went silent, but her eyes said it all. She felt no remorse. "I don't love you anymore, Travis," she said coldly. "I'm happy with Ryan. Leave." I stood there, feeling my heart being crushed. I'd braced myself, but the truth hurt more than I'd imagined. Ryan smirked, raising his beer bottle as if toasting his victory. "You heard her, bro. Get out." I said nothing more. I turned and walked out, the door slamming shut behind me like a final full stop. Outside, the wind cut like ice, but I felt nothing but emptiness. I'd faced them, looked straight at their betrayal, but it didn't ease my pain. Instead, it was like a final knife, severing the last thread tying me to Lily, to Ryan, to what I once called family. I got in the car and drove off into the darkness. The streets of Oregon were hazy, like the future ahead of me. I didn't cry, but my heart was heavy. I'd lost everything, my wife, my brother, and my faith in family. But amidst the pain, a spark flickered. I still had myself. I am Travis, a sailor, and I'd survived storms at sea. I would survive this one. I pressed the gas, leaving Ryan's apartment behind, leaving Lily and her insults. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing: I wouldn't let them define me. I would rise again, even if I was alone. In the days following my confrontation with Lily and Ryan, I was like a ghost. I returned to San Diego, staying temporarily in a small rental room near the naval base, trying to focus on work to forget the pain. But the divorce proceedings, like a massive wave, dragged me into a harsh reality. I sat in the lawyer's office, facing stacks of papers filled with words and numbers, feeling as though I were signing the death certificate of our 4-year marriage. Through her lawyer, Lily demanded an equal split of our assets. The house in San Diego, which I'd bought with a military loan and put in my name, was irrelevant under California law. We were married, so she had a right to claim 50% of its value. I'd poured sweat, effort, and sleepless nights at sea into paying off that house, but now it was reduced to a number on a negotiation table. My lawyer, a middle-aged man with a calm voice, explained, "Travis, you could fight it, but your chances of winning are slim. The court will divide it equally." I nodded, saying nothing. I didn't want to argue, didn't want to prolong the pain. Our joint account, where I'd deposited most of my paycheck, was drained. Lily had taken $20,000 before sending the divorce email, and she demanded half of what remained. I had no separate account to protect myself, a mistake I'd regret forever. After weeks of negotiations, the court ruled Lily would get 50% of the house's value, equivalent to $150,000 and $30,000 from our savings. I had to sell the house to pay her, as I didn't have enough cash. The house, where I dreamed of building a family, was now just a debt. On the day we signed the divorce papers, I saw Lily at the courthouse. She wore a red dress meticulously made up, standing confidently beside her lawyer. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word. I signed my name, my hand trembling slightly, but I kept my face expressionless. When it was over, she walked away without a glance back. I heard later that she and Ryan had moved to Miami, living lavishly off the divorce settlement. I didn't care. I just wanted to sever all ties with her, with the past. I left the courthouse and stepped onto the streets of San Diego. The sun blazed, but inside me was a void. I'd lost my house, a huge chunk of my assets and my faith in love. But I told myself I still had my job, my crewmates, and myself. I am Travis, and I wouldn't lose anymore. The months after the divorce were the hardest of my life. I transferred to Norfolk, Virginia, near a new naval base. I sold the San Diego house and used the remaining money to buy a small apartment. Just a bedroom, a kitchen nook, and a window overlooking the sea. It was modest, but to me, it was a fresh start, a place free of Lily's or Ryan's shadows. I threw myself into work as I always did when facing turmoil. The Navy was my anchor. I led young sailors, trained them, and found joy in helping them grow. My crewmates noticed a change in me, quieter but more dedicated. One evening, my commanding officer called me into his office and informed me I'd been promoted. "Travis, you've earned this," he said, shaking my hand. I smiled, feeling a flicker of pride for the first time in months. I didn't tell him I needed this job to survive, to keep from drowning in grief. Outside of work, I started volunteering. I joined a center supporting veterans, helping them find jobs and reintegrate into civilian life. There, I met people who'd lost everything, homes, families, even hope, but still got back up. They made me realize I wasn't alone. An older veteran, Joe, once told me, "Travis, life's like the sea. Sometimes the waves knock you down, but as long as you're breathing, you've got a chance to keep swimming." His words were like a small flame, warming me through the darkest days. I also found joy in simple things. I jogged along the beach every morning, feeling the salty air on my skin. I learned to cook, though just basic dishes like fried eggs or spaghetti. I made friends with a few neighbors, an elderly couple who loved telling stories and a young sailor who often asked me about the Navy. My life no longer held traces of Lily, Ryan, or my parents, but it was lighter, like the sea after a storm. One major decision I made was to stop all financial support from my parents. Before, I'd automatically paid their bills every month, electricity, water, medications, even car insurance. I did it because I thought it was my duty, even though they never thanked me. But after what happened, the way they defended Ryan, called me a failure, I couldn't continue. I canceled the payments, locked the linked accounts, and cut off all support. Not long after, my mom called, her voice frantic. "Travis, why aren't the bills paid? We're behind on electricity and your dad's meds are running out. Help us, please." I gripped the phone, recalling their insults. "Mom, I can't anymore," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You'll manage." She pleaded, but I hung up, feeling as if I'd shed a heavy burden. They struggled financially, I knew. They'd grown used to relying on me, used to spending my money on Ryan and their own needs. But this time, I was determined not to go back. I wasn't angry, just unwilling to keep sacrificing for people who didn't value me. I cut contact, leaving the past behind. I stood on my apartment's balcony looking out at the sea. The sun was setting, painting the horizon gold. I was no longer the Travis of those betrayed, insulted days. I was a new Travis, a sailor, a friend, a man learning to love himself. I took a deep breath, feeling the sea breeze. Life went on and I was ready to face it one day at a time. A year has passed since I signed the divorce papers. My life in Norfolk has settled into a rhythm, a steady job, a tidy small apartment, and morning jogs along the beach. I no longer think much about Lily or Ryan, but the scars they left still linger like a dull ache that surfaces when the wind shifts. I've learned to live with it, learned not to let the past drag me down. But one evening, as I returned from the Veterans Center, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Travis, it's Lily. Can we talk, please? I sank into a chair, staring at the screen. My heart raced, not from emotion, but from shock. I deleted her number, erased the memories of her, but Lily's voice seemed to echo from the past. Attached to the message was a photo. Lily, her hair disheveled, her face gaunt, dark circles under her eyes. On her arm, vivid bruises stood out like marks from a beating. I looked at the photo, feeling as if someone were choking me. Not because I still loved her, but because I never expected her to end up like this. I hesitated, then texted back, "Go ahead." The phone buzzed instantly. She was calling. I took a deep breath and answered. "Travis." Lily's voice was frail, a far cry from the confidence she'd shown standing beside Ryan. "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I want to come back." I stayed silent, letting her continue. Her voice choked with sobs. She explained that life with Ryan had been a mistake. Ryan was an alcoholic, often drunk and abusive, leaving bruises like the ones in the photo. He'd squandered the divorce settlement on gambling and partying. They'd been evicted from their Miami apartment and were now crammed into a rundown motel room. "I realize you were good, Travis," she said. "I regret leaving you. Please give me another chance." I listened, but felt nothing but emptiness. The woman who'd called me useless and who'd chosen my brother over me was now begging to return with a haggard face and bruises. I remembered the nights she and Ryan mocked me, her cold stare in the courthouse. "Lily," I said calmly, "you chose your path. I'm no longer your harbor." She cried, pleaded, said she had no one else, but I hung up without responding further. I looked out the window at the sea, shimmering under the moonlight. Strangely, I wasn't angry or hurt. I just felt relieved, as if I'd finally closed a door that had been open too long. Sometime later, I got news from Uncle John, my father's brother. He told me my parents were struggling financially since I'd stopped supporting them. They'd sold land to pay debts and moved to a smaller house, but no one reached out to me. Ryan and Lily, from what I heard, were still mired in misery. He was addicted. She was scraping by with odd jobs. Part of me once wanted them to pay, but now I only felt pity. They'd chosen their paths, and I no longer held any resentment. My life in Norfolk grew more meaningful. I was promoted again, becoming one of the most respected officers. Work kept me busy, but I found joy in mentoring young sailors, helping them navigate challenges I'd once faced. I continued volunteering at the Veterans Center, where I not only helped others, but also healed myself. New friends, from Joe with his war stories to the neighbor who brought over homemade cookies, became my new family. I also started opening up more. I wasn't rushing to fall in love, but I was no longer afraid of it. I learned to value myself, to understand that my worth didn't lie in those who'd abandoned me. Every morning, jogging along the beach, I felt a sense of freedom. The sea was still there, powerful and unchanging, like me now. Looking back, I realized the greatest lesson: life isn't fair, but I have the power to choose how to face it. Lily, Ryan, my parents, they hurt me, but they don't define me. I rose from the ashes, built a new life, not to prove anything to anyone, but to live true to myself. I no longer hold grudges. I'm only grateful for having been strong enough to move forward. One evening, I stood on my balcony watching the sunset. The golden light stretched across the sea like a promise of brighter days. I smiled, breathing in the salty air. I am Travis, a sailor, a survivor. And I've found peace, not in others, but in my own heart.